Wagwan, everyone. Single player Carl coming at you again with another live stream cut VOD. This time, tips and guides for how you can be able to manage any size farm, no matter what kind of resources it is that you require or need, and how you require to have them. This one is very simple, it's very straightforward, unlike acid production. Farming is as simple as you get in what you put out. You get yourself some seeds, preferably seeds of multiple types, if not every seed in the fucking game. You put them into a planter box or into soil. Preferably you're going to want a planter box. And you plan out a complex for how you're going to feed it, with water to fund, the water pulled from your tanks, and then pushed all around your facility with grow lights to consistently keep up the plantation growth and its health patterns. This particular design is actually a not necessarily great design, formulated by myself and friend on War 25. Those of you who are seeing this, rise up, shout out. As well as complex, it is meant to upkeep not just the creation and generation of growing, but also the creation generation of deviant-based creativity through your territory control. Just as simple as having one flower plant, one food plant, and then all of them arranged with their requirements. This ensures that not only do you have farming materials, but you also have crafting materials. And as fun as it is with crafting materials, as well as those of us who have been experimenting with Butterfly, it is as easy as creating the securement environment, setting them for high deviant power on cap out, especially if they do or do not have any deviant traits such as the harvest seed for the tree ant, setting and forgetting. So, if you are interested in being able to produce large amounts of food, preferably so that you can be able to produce amounts of deviant crops that can be produced, as well as food crops that can be produced, and pulling something like this every so often now and again for those resources you need them for, this guide is for you. If what you want is to be able to have a large growable stack looking like something like this, this guide is for you. And if you want to be able to have deviant food supplies that look something like this, especially for if you're making use of salt, sugar, or peppercorn, especially considering how many foods in this game require you to have deviated crops, which, for those of you inside of World 25 Discord, you can be able to see by looking at the accessible chefs list that has been posted inside of Resource Gain, which should be up to date with each and every one of these deviant requirements, such as deviated peppercorn for securement soup, deviated cucumber for anti-gravity milkshake, and safety sandwich for those enthusiasts that love wasting time on butter, or just simply having saffron for things such as bacon burger, or PVE'd onion for bacon burger, as well as some really interesting clutch ones, which don't require that much. Granted, deviated mushroom is always going to be shitty for a lot of these things. Mixed fried hot dog, or just your standard preserved chops that need sugar, they need salt, peppercorn, and normal meat of your choice. These things are what you're going to want to be interested in, especially if you want to make use of things like I do, making use of stardish ratatouille to upkeep whenever you're not doing preserved deviated chops, to explore around the map, to find certain things to get done, because there's lots of things in the side map to explore for. This guide is for you. Resources can be as big as you want, it can be as little as you want. But all you have to have is as big or as little of a resource as you'd like to supply. Pump it, dump it, and it will produce. Simple as. You pump it, you dump it, and it will produce. So, again, you want food reservation, if you want food creation, the guide is for you. And this has been recorded live from my YouTube and Twitch channels at YouTube and Twitch.com/SinglePlayerCarl. So if this guide has helped you in any capacity, please shout out, like, favorite, all the algorithmic promotable things. I have not been involved in the tipple twitting incident. I don't know what that means. RV. Anyways, further ado, let's break this down. Your farming guide comes down to basically 3 things. Your intake fertilizer, your expense of that fertilizer, and the resources you make to meet them. We have access to several different plots on the map to find the resources that we require. Some of these resources can be found for farming for farming ease and purpability around most teleport towers. For those that might need the help of doing so, you might want to make use of the guide of the interactive map. The interactive map itself allows you to be able to spot these resources on the map and use them at your leisure. It is pretty much as simple as point and click and get it across. To show some examples, pull it up on the side here. For the majority of most of your resource farming, especially for finding the resources that you need in question, you're going to want to use the Dwappa interactive map. If you're not familiar with the Dwappa interactive map, there is a streamer by the name of Dwappa, or some content creator, some content farm, I'd say, by the name of Dwappa. Dwappa has made a simple point-and-click, use at your leisure resource, where you simply bring the map up, zoom the map in, what it is you're looking for, and in this case, if you want to use this as best as you can, you basically turn off a majority of these things that you do not need to see. Turn off the hints, elites, accessories, recipes, and the treasures as a whole. And you just want to turn on things like food materials, blueberries, bananas, cabbages, mushrooms. But in this case, we're interested in apples, bananas, and grapes, if I can find them on this list. Grapes, because you need apples for a resource, and grapes, ironically enough, cannot be found in most places. They are usually found around teleportation towers. The infinite wisdom of this, I do not understand, personally. But you know, woody-dee. So you can look here when you look at the map. Some bananas and some apples are located nearby some very, very early places, like bananas around Debtsville. And ironically enough, on the other side of the map, towards Chalk Peak, at these teleportation towers, grapes and apples in the region, as well as some blueberries, for those of you who like to use certain things as filler crop to get things across the line. To make true use of all these resources, you want to be able to find the resource, farm the resource, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then when you find the resource, farm the resource, and get it across the margin, be able to do that on recap. So, here on Dwappa's map, we will look for the resource of apples and grapes. Grapes get used in a XP recipe, but realistically, I'm just doing it to show you exactly how complex, for some reason, they decided to make some of these. So, looking up here, outside of the Alpha Institute, at its waypoint, you've got 2 apple trees, some distance away, and some grape nodes. You'll see, looking down at the map, at another location, probably one of the best locations, right outside of inspection point 091, you've got 2 apple trees, 3 grape farms. Another one, all the way down here, a little bit of a way outside of Fisherman's Wharf to the north. 3 grapes, technically 2, and 2 apple trees, and a blueberry batch. These are going to be where you get your apples. And you need to get your apples like this, because apples are probably one of the first fertilizers that you require. As you can see inside your advanced supply list, go down to your fertilizers. For those of you who have not gotten improved compound fertilizer, which is straight up deviated mushroom in your mouth, you're going to need to basically luck yourself into getting these. This is not easy, this is not rare. This is why farming requires a bit of a guide. You must build for density. even what I have inside of this current construction is not enough for the actual need I have, because I've been growing for not only the experimental purposes for the purpose of making this guide, but also I've been growing for the experimental purposes of being able to set up and provide food buffs for the entirety of world PVE01-0025. You have 4 basic fertilizers. Yield boost is going to require 3 mushroom and 3 fertilizer. Breeding boost is going to require scarlet camelus and 5 stacks. This is not a simple amount of growing. It's not easy to collect this like it would be collecting white lotus to use on plants to create some resources as you are crafting food buffs to use as you're going, like making iced tea and just using any flower you find. You will have to focus grow this. It is going to be growing and require stacks of 5, so you're going to require to grow at least a giant harvest of at least 30 plots. If you want to mass craft your breeding boost, you're going to need a lot of it in the beginning, because you need your seeds. Now, once you get your seeds going, it's really just going to be bouncing between yield boost, growth boost, and mutation boost. But, fertilizer growth boost, apples in single amounts, plus 3 fertilizer, and then mutation, 5 mushrooms, easy enough, but 30 Stardust Source, and 3 fertilizer. Stardust Source is a very necessary part of your balanced growing diet. How are you going to supply this? Some of you might ask. This is actually why the acid guide was important for me to do first, because there is actually a upgrade in the game, or an item in the game rather. It makes this thousands and thousands of times easier. Storage batteries. Why are storage batteries important, Carl? They require acid and electronic parts. Well, you're going to be exploring zones to begin with anyways, and you should be sitting on a hella steel ingot, because steel ingot doesn't require you to burn off any acid to really make stuff. But that, only one half the bundle. The reason why is, if you can find someone who has the ability to craft something by the name of the Stardust water pump. This transforms 1 storage battery into 80 Stardust Source. Basically, for this, you're just going to need the acid to produce, and you're going to need the electronic parts to make. It also requires rubber, and it's also going to require steel, which requires iron, but those 2 resources you get constantly, especially if you're going around places collecting things in the higher level zones, especially if you've gotten to the 5th tier level, which is 41 to 50, and you are basically waiting for Leia, it's called, or any other resources. You just put it, you connect it to power. It doesn't actually use any water. It only uses batteries. If you're around zones like this and doing raids like this, now that we're in phase 3, so many of you should be power farming hard mode if you have not been doing your instances. If you're not already just sitting on top of your prime wards, you're going to farm these zones for resources and materials, take it back to craft, load things up over time, and then just whop, 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 whop all the time. Spamming this as much as you can. As you can clearly see, if 1 battery equals 80 Stardust Source, I used 20 there to produce no less than 1600. So, this, as well as you hitting your camps, you hitting your resources, you hitting everything that you need for your growing purposes, will lead to you being able to have the harvests that I do. The most important part of this, of course, is how are you going to deal with the overcrop, because the way that the timers work in this game, all of these do not rot at the same time. They actually tick down and base their amounts based on the cap of what is actually inside your resources. So, when I go here and I look at my food buffs, especially the ones that are going to go bad and rot, these preserved deviated chops actually have multiple stacks inside of them. So if they have multiple stacks inside of them, you're actually going to want to time it in such a way that you can make use of those stacks for your purposes. This is why you want to have those Stardust Ratatouille buffs, so you can run around the map and do things. As you can also see there, the next stack that was inside of that stack of Stardust actually was a consumable. So by putting these in your fridges, you're going to be able to preserve the food, obviously, for longer. but more importantly, actually I can carry this with me, but more importantly, all this extra food source that you're getting from spoilage is going to provide you the ability to keep things up over time. You're going to want to have at least 4 fridges, one inside of your major complex and then another one on the outside for storing away the, what I'm going to call, burnable excess. This is what's going to make your fertilizer, this is what's going to make your spoiled food. You're going to want to hit a general amount of spoiled food alongside an upkeep of Stardust, because you need it in order to make shit. Now, one of the godsend things that comes with this, compost bin, electronics grabber. You're going to want electronics grabber to increase the upkeep of your electronic parts from storage crates when you're going around zones collecting things. Doesn't matter what zone you get it from. So this is good for either those of you that are hitting 35 to 50, especially if you need iridium crystals to make your close turrets 3. But compost bin, electronics grabber, and backpack extension, plus or minus a solar drill for what we're going to be using to create a significant amount of fertilizer. You're going to want to have spoiled food. You're going to want to take out half of your stack. You're going to want to put half of that stack neatly away in your inventory, and then just let it turn itself into fertilizer mushroom. Simple, easy, brainless. Ain't got to think about it. Ain't got to do much at all about it, actually. Then you get your deviates. If you, like me, have done a couple of rerolls and have been successfully able to snipe the custom storage bin, you can actually consolidate all of your extra deviant growth, because deviated crops do not decay. So if you're just setting, forgetting, collecting, and putting it away for a rainy day, this is definitely going to be a style that you're going to want to have. However, back to my point, you're going to want to have a giant resource full of stuff to do this. The first thing you're going to want to have is you're going to want to focus on putting away your meats, putting away your flour gains, and putting away your crops, as well as having refrigerators for food. Because food decays, some of it, not all of it, since food decays, you're going to need to know how you want your kitchen set up, especially if you have been haunted by the geru of your Stephosaurus Rexes. But you basically want to know exactly how much you're going to make in one time. If you're going to make a food, make a lot of that food. I'd say no less than 10, but no more than 30, because if you are not going to turn it into fertilizer, it will go to waste very, very quickly. In my personal opinion, in my professional opinion. So between that and a Stardust pump, all of this, I would say if you're not going to be using the deviated crop version, you don't have to use it, but I would suggest it if you're going to make deviations. When you first go back during a rotation, which I'm now going to shorten to rota, you're going to look at the crops that you want to make. You're going to look at the resources that you have. You're going to go to craft your fertilizer. You're going to look at how much you actually require versus how much you actually need. You're going to look at how much resources you have, and you're going to make a choice between, do you craft it all at once, thus making use of all of your mushrooms for mutation boost? Are you going to yield boost it so you can get more materials? Are you going to breed boost to try and get seeds? Or are you going to growth boost to be able to make them grow faster? Between these 4, you're probably going to be relying on mutation, growth, and yield. So, between mutation, growth, and yield is going to be when you need a lot. This means you're going to be at the speed of which they grow for. Some plants require 6 hours. Some plants require 12 hours. If you put them inside of a planter box, they will grow faster. But I stream 6 to 16 hours every day. I would usually say within a 10-hour system, I get 2 harvests on a rota as I'm going through the areas. Maybe about 3 to 4 hours every single grow cycle. For a growth boost, I would say it's about maybe closer to 2 to 3 hour harvest. So about 3 if I wanted to use a baseline of 10 hours of streaming or 9 hours of streaming. Mutation boost is the same as a yield, but increases deviation chance. And then, of course, for the specialization for crop fertilizer, this is mutation rate and yield at the cost of growth, and it requires deviated mushrooms in order to achieve the effect. So, if you wanted to do mutation and yield, but you were willing to sacrifice growth, you must have deviated mushrooms. But obviously, you can't use deviated mushrooms to then create deviated mushrooms. That's silly. That's probably the first piece of advice and tip that I'd be able to give you. You're going to choose which one you want over which one you don't want. So, if you're going to use mutation boosts and you're going to use it to create deviated mushrooms to create compound improved fertilizer, you need a dedicated 30 plot setup for this. I say 30 plot because you're basically going to yield boost and growth boost constantly those mushrooms in that 30 plot coverage. It doesn't matter how you have them arranged, and it doesn't matter how you have them under your grow lights, and it doesn't matter how you have them in your sprinklers. That part is as simple as setting it up when you're building it. When you have it fully built, the general idea is you're going to want to have 30 plots of this. You need 30 plots of mushrooms because 30 plots of mushrooms is 30 chances to find a deviated mushroom just by using yield and growth. If you want to conserve all of your starter source and you do not want to use breeding boost, or excuse me, you don't want to use mutation boost, this is how you're going to achieve that. You're basically going to be doing luck of the draw. For everything else, when you have the mushrooms prepared and you have the starter source ready that you're willing to prepare, find somebody that can get you that pump, make those batteries, set it and forget it every time you do a rota, and then when you've decided for what you want to do, go out and go find the resource. So, we talked about a couple of different teleportation spots. Looking back again and looking at it, we will want to use the teleportation spot outside of Fisherman's Wharf for some apples. We'll also want to use the one that is at inspection point 091 to get some apples and grapes. So, let's go do it. Find Fisherman's Wharf. Find the teleportation zone. Wharf is down here, right outside of Securement Site EX1. And here, around the area, will be your notes. If you don't know what a grape bush looks like, they look like these. Gathers 1. If you want to make anything that uses grapes, anything that uses apples, anything that uses anything, they harvest in nodes of 1 to 5 per, respectively. So you got these around here. And then you have your first apple tree pulled in this direction, right here. And while you're doing this, practice and keep in your mind any crop you see on the way over, you're going to want to walk through. So, when you go around doing that, you can also be able to pick up from free resources. I prefer going for flowers. I also sometimes get anything that's deviated that I see in the field to harvest. But you definitely want to grab flowers as you're doing this. You also can grab any other nodes you need. You definitely want to grab corn as you're doing this as well. Walk a little bit of ways down the hill. It's a bit hard to remember, so I might actually have to put a marker to remember for myself. Also, let's try not to get pigged. Somewhere around this crest of the tree, and this particular spot, is where that extra apple tree is. Right here. Hello, Mr. Force. Goodbye, Mr. Force. I do not see the grape node to be serious, but here's one of your first nodes. Also work as an easy way to get some free meat while you're on the move. Any meat is good meat, especially when you need to make it into fertilizer, but you will have to cook off meat. For some reason, it will not let you put in, at least sometimes, it might be a bug, put in certain things for certain things. Look a little bit for the grape node. Grape node might not be spawned. Be fine. And then you just go through on your way back, picking up any resource on your way. And if you do this right, the actual node for the resource should respawn, so you can run back and forth and back and forth. So you can see here, opportunity respawn. Which also means the grape nodes should have respawned. And pretty much Bob's your uncle. If you don't like having to look for it as easy as that, you of course go to the teleportation node for inspection point 091. And 091 will probably be easier for those of you who have gotten to the 35 zone. All of the ones that happen to be working around the space and the room of the general nodes tends to be a little bit harder to make use of because they're further spread out. But fortunately, inspection points zone are all around the teleportation point. You'll have to go a little bit of way out of the way for them by running towards the bush, but got your grapes, get your berries, you got your apples. And every time you collect apples, it should always be 5 crop drop. I really don't like that the grape nodes are not that easy to tell what they are when you look at them. The fortunate thing about this is that I think that it's an extra tree up the hill, but I might be wrong. Double check the map. Yes, I am wrong. That is not one of the hill. But the fun part about doing this particular resource cap for finding apples is that you can just keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So if you're looking for a certain kind of resource in an area, just keep doing this about 15-30 minutes, and you should have all the apples you could ever want, ever need, and ever fucking care for, as well as any other resource you want to use it for. There's also another reason why I'm specifically telling you this point, and I will cover that in a second. So this covers your need for grapes, should you have them, and apples, should you need them, as well as flower resources, like cone flowers, and sage, should you want them. But you might say to yourself, but Carl, I still need fertilizer in large amounts. I tell you, be not worried. This zone will provide for you. Those of you who may not be familiar, there is a seafood resource in the game, as unfucking mitigated as it is. That seafood resource is seaweed, shellfish, and roe. Roe turns into caviar. You need it from farming. And shellfish, in the infinite wisdom of the designers, is farmed from rocks, as is the seaweed. In any zone that is facing the ocean, you should get node spawns of rocks that either have shellfish or seaweed. Just go up and you mine it. Excuse me, Poochie. Go up and you mine it. Now, there are a couple of things that come from this. Number one, because it is a rock resource, you are effectively mining the rock and getting back gravel, as well as the resource. Now, don't be like me the first time I did this and get carried away and break your drill. You're definitely going to want to do this during the daytime, when you have some ample sunlight to refill your drills. This also acts as a way for you to come down here and collect seawater should you need it. But you're basically going to go to every seaweed. You can also use the shellfish, but shellfish is a little bit harder to make use of. And go to the seaweed rocks and just mine them. So over and over again. As you can see, every tick is 30 gravel and 4 seaweed. Get 3 stacks. I'd say 3 is a good minimum, a good healthy minimum as a growth boost starter. Mine. Sometimes you might get nothing but straight up shellfish nodes, and that's fine. Shellfish is not weak, and it's not bad. It's just that they separate into 2 different resources. They separate into shellfish, which has a 4-hour keep time, and seaweed, which also has a 4-hour keep time. So it'll take stacks in your inventory, and seaweed weighs less than shellfish. So if you're not making use of that shellfish dish, say that 10 times fast. If you're not making use of that shellfish dish, you're going to want to maintain and prioritize your seaweed. You can swim across the zone if you need to, but just like the other one, find the nodes, walk back and forth, and try to get yourselves 3 stacks. See, my durability for my drill started from 50. Currently have 20. Now we're working on the next stack. Do this 5-10 minutes. In fact, you can do this in the rota when you start looking for your apples at the same time. And then after you find all the seaweed you want, let the drill recover its durability, and then go out and do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again, and again, and again, and again. Should require 1 more rock here. We're already at the cap. And there we go. 300 seaweed. Turn to the rota. Grab everything that's not tied down. And you can basically go between the waypoints and grab the resource like this non-stop. For those of you who have yet to find a grow shroom, you can also use this as a way to get a grow shroom, because he can be found off of wild instances of mushroom, as well as being found off of farmed instances of mushrooms. And that is more or less the straight up how to do it within 10, 15, 30 minutes cap. If you're worried about movement speed and you're worried about moving fast, you're going to want to get specifically one special type of drink and then pair it with whatever movement speed food you need. For me, I use Stardust Ratatouille, which requires cabbage, and iced tea, which requires ice and any kind of flour, and something else I'm slightly forgetting. And when you do the combat roll, you will be moving at a mile a minute. Those of you who are probably looking at this guy and are wondering how the fuck is Carl moving so fast and ducking, diving, and dodging, and getting away from us in the middle of cargo scramble, on top of having chloro armor, I'm also using this if I'm not using safety sandwich. You move fast, you fight fast, no big deal, no iffy, no biggie. Like this here. Back to the teleportation point. Back to inspections teleport. Tree. Well, that's a bug if I've ever seen one. Bush, bush. And now we go back, and let's look at what we've gathered in the amount of time we had it. You can see here, just from that rota, we gathered all that excess, but 74 apple, 11 grapes, 30 seaweed. What you do with that is you bring that up to your planter sections. Bring it in, and just slam it in. All 100 stacks. Just slam it in. Turns out you can't use shellfish, so you can actually do both like this. You slam it in, and there's your compost. Simple, 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 simple. Come over to this resource. Anything that has a cooldown and a timer for food, slam in one refrigerator. Anything that's meat, slam into the other. I like putting my herbs and my meat together, simply because you don't usually collect that many herbs. It doesn't matter what type of meat it is, especially if you find the also rare bear meat that can be found inside of Chalk Peak. And now, when you look at your fertilizer, 39 here, 4 here, but of course, Scarlet Camelus, I believe it harvests in tiers of 5 when you harvest it, compared to the 1 when you're going along the riverbanks. I would not suggest using that method to find it, but if you really, really are dedicated to getting breeding boost to start, and you are still in the beginner zones, or you're willing to go around the beginner zones to find it, you can also find this across the rivers of Chalk Peak if you're willing to go as low as 35. Growth boosts, obviously, and of course your mutations. Me, I need growth. I'm gonna slam 50 here, and 30 here, and the rest of these here. Set it, forget it. Now let's talk harvest. Harvest is very simple. You're already gonna have your pre-crafted mythology for this. You're gonna have all of this already set up before you even put it into the stuff. But let's talk grow light capacity. Grow light capacity requires you to understand the mechanics of the grow lights, as well as understanding the mechanics of the sprinklers. Automatic irrigation facilities have a couple of interesting properties. Number one, when they are planted in the ground, you can actually sit on them in such a capacity that you can put the planter boxes all around them once it's been placed, and you can have it inside the boxes, so that anything covered in a 2x2 space, granted it's not a perfect 2x2, but a 2x2 space, can receive water and receive light from an overhead hung grow light, because by bringing up a half wood tile with a gable ceiling, you can increase the capacity and range of its coverage. So this is why this particular setup of mine is inefficient, air quote, and is not as great. And as you can also see here, because of my fuck you Watercrest Island outside of Evergreen, that I'm inside of a pollution zone. That is for power purposes. Probably will be moving the base to another place that has the same type of polluted power point for energy purposes. This does not take that much energy, to be serious. Grow lights take 1. Irrigators should take 3 to 4. 2, actually. And then the rest of the water actually comes from the water system. However you're pulling your water, and however you're going to spread your water. Now, for most of us, if you're using a setup, you're probably using 80, so that's 10 each pump. But as you can see here, I have deviation energy source with the this particular upgrade for it. So its current max output with nothing on it is 4.2. I've got advanced solar panels, which also have these. These were crafted for me by someone else because I only have Sparksmith. And with this, you will have anywhere between a minimum of 32, with an eel on top of it, 45.8, and this will run your pump setup. This will be for any kind of overflow you need, as well as if you're running it off of something like advanced solar power. But if you're not running your mining platforms, should you be mining for Stardust mining, this is just free 45 energy that you could be conserving on your power grid. Same thing exists with the power grid here. I run this off of 3 advanced solar panels for 42.2 because of the eel, and then 32 and 32. You can run it off of whatever you want. You can run it however you want, but your power supply is not the thing that actually prevents your production. It is actually your intake of water. You're going to want to cycle this for a while, but between your polluted water and your dirty water, you're going to have enough water, and should have enough water, to set this up. And as you can see here, I have 2 plugs and 2 switches for the power generation. The right switch is just lights. I control the lights independently from the water source, because if you do not do this, you will be burning off your water supply. And I have just a simple setup. I have one tank that used to be not full, and I have a second full tank when I turned on the extra pumps. I'm producing the impure acid to purify, as well as the pure water to spread. Back filter 5, this is a minimum what you need. When you pull the water together, daisy chain the tanks together, and then on the last tank, wire it to your pumps. Your first pump is going to wire to your first set, and then your next pump is going to wire to your second set. The way that I suggest doing this is have a pump each floor that you intend to have on. So one floor lower than your grow supply. If you are elevating this at any capacity, which you probably will if you want to have a proper grow facility, I'd say go as high as 3 stories, but do not go so high as I did. Marble your floor. Put your water and tanks on the first floor. Have them stacked in the corner to pull together. Have the water in that resource. It could be as low as the water is on the floor, or even you're pulling the water directly out of the ground. Osmosis. Then tanks. Pump for the first floor. Boom. Pump on the second floor of the wall of the first floor to feed the second floor. Boom. Simple, easy, clear, done. You're gonna think about all the logistics and wire all the logistics of how you want it done, but then you will achieve the effect of getting a half gable by crafting a roof. You will need to make use of columns to support the roof weight, otherwise it will break. 4 pillars each floor, more than enough. You're probably going to craft this building before you craft your purification silos for protection, but put them all together. Friend's design was to create a 12-box cross, but sometimes because it doesn't really work that well, and it's based on the positioning of the Gurlite, because the Gurlite is really bad when it comes to this, this will control that extra spot, even if it's just 10 and not the mass 14. Work it around however you can to get them under the light, then plant, set, and forget. So here, let's go around and make my first rota of mushroom. For mushroom, you're going to want to have either growth or breeding if you need seeds, or yield. Since this should be ready to grow. No, still working on it, but this is a little bit enough. But while it's still working on the grow, pick up some of the harvest from it directly. Pick up whatever my grocery decided to steal. Seems to be the blueberry patches that I put in front of the window. And you just... Fortunately, this part of the game is easier. You find the seed that you want. Find the crop that you want. Click F. Set and forget. Simple as. Same with the mushrooms. All the way around. When it comes to dealing with your water from the planters and for the spigot will fill up with water, and you do not need to have it running all the time. When it goes around first watering the plants, It will actually water up to the capacity that you plant for its target. It has a interaction window, similar to the interaction window of the target grow light. You can be able to look at the water that is inside of it. You can also then be able to look at the irrigator that it's planting for as it goes around in that watering cycle. And in the irrigation for that watering cycle, you can then be able to double check against it should you not have enough. And you can see whether or not you are at the capacity of your water when it maxes out. It does not do it instantly, and instead does it over time. The planter boxes can actually hold that water for a significant period of time. So as long as you turn it on when you finish your rota and you go to leave, or when you know that it's been a while for the rota to have water, you place the water down, turn the water on, and then turn it off. After you come back from your first rota inside of a tutorial, like inside of a territory, when you're going to strongholds to go find materials, and you upkeep the water like that, so that you can actually fill your tanks with water. You're also going to want to have mobile water for the purposes of anything you need it for, whether this be just to have the resource to grow and stack, or you're specifically stacking the resource in a certain way for any other capacity. But you definitely want to blast your growth at the same time. Then, of course, for the rest of your planter boxes, you pretty much pick whatever you want. I believe what I need is a round of tomatoes and then cucumbers. What's this on my foot? There's nothing. I'm tweaking. I also do peppercorn as a round. Peppercorn is a bit annoying when it comes to yield, so try to get that one out the way. Try to stockpile as much as you can, because it's one of the resources that does not rot. And you will have to do this manually. Unfortunately, I've tested with the grow shroom. I don't know if it's because the grow shroom itself is bugged, or if his behavior is weird, but the grow shroom is supposed to plant and harvest, but the only thing it seems to be doing is just straight up harvesting your resources. He also is uncontrollable. Any of the things that you give him to do, he will not do directly. So, be forewarned about that. I think we will go breeding on the cabbage. And then finally for this rota, I believe I'm going to need cucumber. We will blast that with yield. I can't give you numbers on deviation chances, mainly because I think it's just a 50-50, it is or it isn't. I've seen sometimes up to 1 out of 5 with non-deviation fertilizer, and then sometimes 50-50 with it, but pretty much if what you want is to have the deviated version of the crop, put the deviated fertilizer, set and forget it, and then do it in a round. And then on the upper section, I believe for this one we will do... could do a mix. Onion is a choice. And it also needs breeding boost. And that is basically the long and short of it. That is how you farm and harvest. The part that you don't see is the going out and the getting of more resources to bring back more resources, specifically in the form of getting the food, getting the stuff. I usually do them in phases. I do them in days and waves. Then, when you have access to however you want to put it away, for some of the main things you harvest, you're going to be putting them inside of the same box, alongside your fertilizer and your food. Pick them up, put them in the box, press X, put it away, that easy. Then, come over here, mash them into the refrigerator, mash into the refrigerator, and then Bob's your uncle. And that's as simple as farming really has to be. At least for the upkeep of it. Designing of it, mess around with some build designs. Figure out how you want to get floor coverage so that you can have that many more grow lights covering everything. The bigger the better. I can tell you that much. The bigger the better. That being said, that's basically the end of the guide. Hopefully, some of the tips here that I've given you have been helpful. Some of this has illuminated. Some of this has illuminated what you have to give. So sorry for the yapping, but educational streaming requires you to talk. Again, if it's been helpful, you can be able to find me wherever Carl and Carl basic related items can be sold. YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, etc. Follow, like, subscribe, algorithmically promoted things. And if you are interested in being able to get my help directly, you can be able to find me on PVE01-0025 for World 25. My handle is SPCarl. Everyone know Carl. Is SPCarl_YouTube. Hit me up. Ask me questions. Preferably on Discord. Cannot type in the game right now. Long story. Don't worry about it. Alright. We will see you next time. Same Carl time. Same Carl channel. I hope this all helps you. Hope it finds you well. Goodbye, everybody.